Jai Hind, Jai Bharat, and welcome to Dev Talk. This is Aadi. Thursday night, Ukraine night, with Major General Prabdeep Singh, who will probably have some more revelations for us, as the previous ones have hit bang on target. And as a matter of fact, the last show that we did received some very amazing response from all around the world, if I may. I've got messages from Lithuania, Estonia, Netherlands, Germany, Russia. I mean, it's been insane. The kind of response that we've got has been really, really encouraging. And thank you, all of you, for that. Today, what are we going to discuss? We're going to discuss two things. The Western media today talks about the factor that it's kind of accepting a certain amount of defeat for Ukraine. Articles are coming out in the Wall Street Journal, New York Times, Washington Post, BBC, the usual culprits, that Ukraine is, not able to do what it's supposed to do. Then the second part we will try and discuss is NATO going to try and do something stupid? And I'm sorry for using that word right at the beginning, in the Black Sea. And that's something that we'll have to analyze. And let's go on and further understand what's the situation on the ground with the Russian offensive coming in. So the basic thing is the Ukrainian offensive has turned into a Russian offensive. Interesting. Sir, let me bring you in. Thank you so much for joining us once again and giving us your insights about the Ukraine war. Uh, as I was saying, the Ukrainian offensive has turned into the Russian offensive. ये क्या हुआ?
Uh, Good evening. It's good to be back once again talking about what's happening in Ukraine as it interests all of us all across the world, and definitely everybody is watching the war as it proceeds. And what is going to be the outcome of this war is something which is going to shape the rest of the world and the times to come. So what happens is that. This offensive, counter-offensive, offensive, these words are being used, I would say, at times very loosely. Offensive action is an offensive action. Now, in one way, when we look at it, we do realize that the Ukrainian army is at places making a little bit of headway in the south and a little bit south and also in the east, but then it's gaining very marginal territory, and in return is getting battered because the moment firstly these guys are coming in very small groups, but of late there has been a tendency the last 2 days, and even the Ukrainian army, they're thinking in terms of regrouping and reorganizing themselves so that the outcome of the counteroffensive is a little more worthwhile. Now, as they try and drive in wedges in the south and also in the east, uh, you know, we do hear of some gains being made by them. But then you got to realize that defenses are always elastic, and a good defender will allow the attacking forces to come in a little deep at times, and then subsequently hammer them with great amount of artillery and air and missiles, etc. So that's precisely what is happening. There are a large number of losses in the Ukrainian side. No, as was always discussed and envisaged, we've had the Russians also taking on and moving in from the defensive to an offensive, and this is happening towards Kupiansk, towards the north part of it. So I'll leave it at that before we go on to discuss. There are other issues also, which have other events that have happened. Crimea has been under attack. We know that. We know that Odessa has been attacked by the Russians, and the interesting one has been the attack near the Romanian border at the uh, at the entrance of the Danube. Not at the entrance, at the where the river Danube joins the Black Sea. So these kind of activities have taken place It's kind of rattled Romania. It's kind of rattled NATO, and there are concerns that the effect of this could manifest in something larger, wherein the NATO forces may also try and uh, kind of get into the Black Sea, and then there will be a little bit of trouble. Of course, it is being realized that the correction, the Russians are not going to be allowing any civilian, ships and cargo ships to come in for the fear. I wouldn't say for the fear, for they believe that these ships, when they come in, they don't come in empty. They bring in arms and ammunition, and they offload them at the shores, and then in turn they take back wheat. So that is how the Russians are reacting to this. Then, of course, the Ukrainians are also doubling up their efforts using Storm Shadow missiles on the Crimean soil. And, you know, Russia considers Crimea as a part of their territory. It considers that to be Russian territory. And Storm Shadow missiles being used against Russian territory is considered a sacrilege as far as the Russians are concerned. Interestingly, there's been statements by the United States that they do not encourage attacks
Hmm.
Russian territory. Now, this can be viewed as as a response to the Moscow attack, the drone attack which was made on Moscow, and wherein about two old buildings were kind of damaged, and also onto the attacks which are taking place in Crimea. So whatever is Russian territory, that's what the Americans are saying, that we do not really encourage attacks on Russian territory. Now, this is where the dichotomy is occurring, because the Ukrainians feel that they, as far as they are concerned, they are in a fight with Russia, and if they have been given a some sort of an equipment or wherewithal, they will use that, whether they use it inside Ukraine captured territories or into Russian territories, as they would like to take the war into Russia itself. Now, they are kind of stretching it a little too far and maybe treading into dangerous territory. But if you ask me personally, well, nothing stops them from attacking Russian territory. After all,
Hmm.
it's two nations at
It's a
war.
war. Hmm.
It's a war. And what stops them from not targeting, you know, uh, areas which are which are in Russia? So that kind of logic to say that they should restrict their war into Ukrainian territories, in my opinion, doesn't really hold good.
Hmm.
Now, the other factor which is coming in to play is Belarus. Belarus, Belarus, which was supposed to have been, you know, which had aided the initial offensive.
Offensive.
That was, yeah, the last year in the beginning of the SMO, or the special military operation, which came in through the Belarusian territory. After that, once the withdrawal had taken place, once the troops had gone back, uh, Belarus had kind of mellowed down. Then it came to prominence when they spoke about the tactical nuclear weapons will be located, and then we heard that they had already been located, and then it started getting prominence because of the Wagner Group. Today, as we see it, even satellite images and photographs are showing a large troop concentration of the Wagner forces in a camp which is just about 5 odd miles uh, from the Polish border. So obviously now the Poles are also jumping, and
Worried.
they are the ones
Hmm.
they are the ones reacting to it. And I again do not blame them, because every country, every sovereign nation has the right to protect itself and will take actions to do so. So what I'm trying to say is that the war today is taking on a dimension wherein Romania is getting the jitters, Poland is getting the jitters, Lithuania is also getting the jitters, and we did talk about the Suwalki corridor last time. So all these kind of uh, uneasiness is taking place all across in these countries which are bordering, I would say, Ukraine, Russia, Baltic Sea, as also the Black Sea. So some little bit of jitters everywhere are happening. Now, how this will manifest is what we'll have to really wait and watch as to what, how, where the shape of the battle uh, progresses and what actions are taken. As far as Russia is concerned, I always maintained and I've always said that Russia is waiting for what? For the offensive. Russia is
Hmm.
waiting for the Ukrainian troops, most of the Ukrainian, the reserves to be deployed in an offensive anywhere. So in this case, they're looking at coming down south and onto the east. Even uh, Mr. Zelensky is quite proud of the fact that small gains are being made in Bakhmut and the areas around. So this is kind of even the defense minister Hannah. She keeps talking about all this. So while it is something to show to the rest of the world that we are making progress, this is a kind of a tactics which the Russians would like to employ, and that's what exactly what they're doing. And I keep waiting and I keep waiting. I keep waiting till you uh, commit most all your forces. Once you've committed all your
Hmm.
forces, I drive in uh, without any opposition. Now, so this the offensive which is coming onto the northern side, the Luhansk area. What you find here is that few villages have already been captured. A village called Nadia that's been captured and things like that, and progress has been made. And progress, as we see it, on both ends, less on the Ukrainian side, more on the Russian side. The progress is 4 kilometers across and about a 1.5 kilometers or 2 kilometers deep is what the progress is. If you really look on ground, 2 kilometers uh, for a large offensive, if it is a large offensive, is not really much. But what I kind of comprehend from all this is that it's still a wait and watch. The main offensive, the Russians, is not yet unleashed, because once it is unleashed, it will be very forceful. It will employ the Russians would employ a larger force, and they will aim to go in deeper. So as of now, they just made a bridgehead across this river called Zeher well. What's
Hmm.
and I'll just show you that you can show the slide as to where the second one that I just gave it to you. The next one, please, or the next one. No, so I think I skipped that. So
I'll get it out, sir. 1 second.
no, no
I mean,
issues.
you can
This is
continue. I'll just give me a second. I'll be out with it.
so we have these operations in the northeast, north, which are taking place, and you see the circles where you know a little bit of progress has been made by the Russians. So as we see, they're crossing over a river, and once they cross over a river, they basically securing crossings over this river river line. And once these crossings are established, the major force would perhaps follow suit. But when it follows
Hmm.
suit is a question that we got to really watch. It's definitely they're not in a hurry. They'll still want the Ukrainians to commit maximum forces. Now, as I read the battle, the Ukrainians have already started committing their reserves that they had. So, they're moving towards Zaporizhia and towards a place called Rabotine, and that's where they're going. Now, if they're committing the reserves, either means that this is their last offensive, and after which, once their reserves are committed, they will not have adequate forces uh, to stop the Russians. With the Russian attack coming in the north, there has been a little displacement of, I mean, obviously, any defender would, want to contain that offensive, so they are moving their troops from this south, in the south to north direction. So this kind of movement is also taking place to stop the offensive. Now, how far are the Russians inclined to go? Well, as far as I'm concerned, I think Kupiansk, of course, and then beyond Kupiansk into Kharkiv or Kharkov, and that is where they're headed. And that is precisely what anybody, a military planner, would want to do, is go in deep and make the enemy recoil. By recoil, I mean, the moment they've gone in deep, the Ukrainians will have to pull out maximum forces to try and stop this offensive which is coming up in the north. So that is how the recoiling will take place. In what time frame will it take place? It will all depend on the depth to which the Russian offensive, and with the force that the Russian offensive is going to employ. Now we did talk about 900 tanks and 555 artillery pieces, which are already gathered, opposite Kupiansk in this particular area. Uh, but how effective it's going to be? Are they really going to go in deep? And when they will go into deep is a moot point. Is a question which still remains. In my
So
opinion,
that's the
another.
map, sir. Oskil
Yeah,
River.
yeah. So as far as I'm concerned, we are looking at the offensive going in the next 10 days or so, and it'll go in deep. At the same time, I think what is intriguing me is why are the Russians just limited to the areas of these four oblasts? Why are they not going up even north, even into the northern sector? You're looking at uh, much north, Sumy and all these areas. Why are the Russians not wanting to do that? Or is it a factor because of the terrain, or is it because they don't want to kind of escalate, or will they move in later on in that particular area? Is yet to be seen, because at the moment they're just limiting themselves to the four oblasts that they're looking at Crimea
Yeah.
plus these four oblasts, and the claimed territories, or they feel that they're a part of Russia. Should
Yeah,
that
one thing,
strike?
because
Yeah,
sorry to interrupt you. I guess those they've done that referendum, so I guess aren't they going to keep it limited to this zone?
you know,
Just
uh,
a
I,
wild
I
guess.
think, yeah, because the referendum they want to limit to these four areas, but that's being very ethical, if I may just put it. Yeah,
True.
that means they have very limited aims, and if this is the limited aim, then I think these the sooner the West realizes that they're not going beyond this, the West and the NATO forces should be very happy about it. That the Russians are not going to, go in further
But
deep inside.
I mean, you never know, sir.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to say. That at the moment they're playing, they're just wanting to achieve in the first go their designated aims, right?
Hmm.
Which they've clearly defined. This is this these four areas, our territory. Uh, we will throw out the Ukrainians from here, and we will kind of uh, uh, govern them, and we will look after them, and this is Russian territory. Now, if that be the case, what happens to the area bordering the Black Sea, Odessa, and all these ports? So until unless these ports are captured, it really doesn't make sense. So there's a kind of a mismatch in what their war aims perhaps are. So either our reading is incorrect to say that at the moment they're just limiting it to this, in case of further, escalation, or if they want to further escalate it, maybe they will start making offensive overtures towards the northern part of Ukraine, towards Kiev. Now, will that get combined along with what the Wagners are up to? Will the Wagners come down south towards Kiev, or whether they will go into the Suwalki corridor? That is what you got to be seeing. So at the moment, as the jitters are being felt, or the tremors are being felt all over, uh, I I think they're playing the card very well. They're keeping everybody guessing. Uh, they've deployed the Wagners in Belarus, or they have kept the main force still behind. This the force in being is being shown. Yes, we are still there. Where we'll go is we'll let you know later. So this is precisely, I think, in my opinion, what is happening. Yeah.
I
Okay.
mean, intriguingly, sir, you brought in this very interesting question that why aren't they doing anything else? Now, one question, if I may ask you on that subject itself, there are these defensive lines that the Russians have made right up. At least there's a gap in Bakhmut, Artyomovsk, depends on where you're listening from. And of course, there's the gap on the north, which is where they've started up the offensive. And that was a clear gap. That's why a lot of the times Ukrainians were talking about attacking from the north. And but then that missile strike hit Kharkiv, and a lot of these chaps died, and they kind of changed their plan. So there are only two places where the Russians could break out. Correct me if I'm wrong. One is from the Bakhmut region, and one is from the north, and that's what they're doing right now. You can see them amassing something in Bakhmut, because the Ukrainians have been trying to attack that place relentlessly.
You see,
So,
Bakhmut is a kind of a prestige issue. The
hmm,
Russians have got it. The Ukrainians want it back. It's more of prestige, and it's more of showing to the world as to how the Ukrainians are steadfast in, you know, getting what they have lost. Now, a little word on what you just mentioned. When it comes to defenses,
hmm,
uh, defense these defense lines that they have created, the anti-tank ditches that they have been created. We can see that little slide. If you can just show that, please, the third one.
yes, sir. 1 second, we're up.
Yeah, I mean, this is a typical kind of a layout. I just picked it up from how they've. It's, I think, from the BBC or somewhere. How this
BBC, yes.
yeah, these anti-tank ditches are laid out. So you have an anti-tank ditch, then you have the Dragon's Teeth, and then you have the trench network. And then you behind the trench network, you have mortar positions, and much behind that you have the artillery. So the and all this area would be mined. So this is a typical layout, uh, of defensive line, which the Russians have constructed all across. Now, remember, a good army also leaves gaps in these defenses, because after all, if they have to go through, they don't want to be passing through this, right? So everywhere, any defender, when it is mining, making ditches, doing all this, will always leave areas which are of interest to they themselves, right? So otherwise, these are this kind of a defensive line or trench line is working both ways. So
Right.
that's where the
Also,
that
hmm,
that's where the scene comes in, that you have they did not they were always all the while planning to use these corridors for launching of offensives. So
okay.
if the Ukrainians had read it well, on their side they should have already constructed the defenses, which they did not. So they kind of failed to read the battle, and failed to read the layout. If you have a continuous line and then there are certain gaps, what do they mean? They mean that these will be utilized sooner or later for an offensive or for a counter attack or even if it's a local counter attack, you need these lanes. So this kind of reading of the battle or the defensive layout should have been done by the Ukrainians, which I think they have failed to do. And as you mentioned in the beginning, you have the BBC and the Washington
Yeah,
Post,
let's
and
get to that now.
yeah, they're making statements as to uh, you know the war's
All is done.
proceeding. It's done. It's not proceeding the way it should have, and the offensive is not. We agree that it has not got that kind of momentum as it should have been, and these kind of overtures or these kind of statements are coming in. I think they've been coming in from a very long time now. The realization for the last 3 4 months is already set in within the West, and media today is pointing it out very clearly that this counteroffensive is not working. At
Done.
the same at the same time, the Ukrainians under the president, who apparently seems to be driving the entire offensive. I mean, it is quite strange, but that's kind of an appearance that I get. Uh, the feeling that I get that he's the one who's driving as to where they should go and what they should do. Uh, the military mind seems to have been put at the back burner.
Hmm.
So now the tanks, when they are going in for an attack, firstly they're being led by. Maybe you guys are not very aware. There's something called trolls. They're called troll tanks. So you would, if you read somewhere, you will find that a tank with two rollers was seen moving. Now, these are called troll tanks. These troll tanks have got like a road roller. They have these rollers which are ahead of them, which move ahead. And these rollers, as they move, the mines keep bursting because of the weight, and these rollers can take the weight of the blast. So about
Is it got
3 to
chains or something, or they literally drive over the mines?
they drive. There are two things. They've got trolls, and then you've got flails.
Hmm.
Flails are the ones that you're talking about, which got chains.
Hmm.
The chains keep hitting the mud
Pounding, yeah.
and they keep going. So those are called flails, and these are troll tanks. Now, actually, there is a method in the madness as to how lanes are to be made through minefields. All right. Now, I do not see that happening here because these troll tanks have to work. They must work in tandem in groups of twos and fours to create a worthwhile kind of lane. But all that can only happen A, in darkness, B, it has to be practiced very well, C, you're looking at air cover and air defense, and you're looking also at artillery.
Hmm.
So that support is lacking. You see, the ecosystem for an offensive does not exist as far as the Ukrainians are concerned. So it's been left to the uh, PBI. PBI is the poor bloody infantry, uh, to just go and just yeah, that's an acronym that we use. Is a poor bloody infantry which has been just told to go and commit suicide in this particular case.
Wow.
So that is the sad part of it, because the infantry, ultimately it is the infantry which captures ground, which holds ground, but then it must get supported by artillery fire, by tank fire, or by it must have air defense, it must get supported by the air, it must get supported by missiles and rockets. So with all that in shortage and all that being distributed all across, no wonder the Ukrainians are really not able to make gains as they should have if they had concentrated their artillery, concentrated their air power, and concentrated, if they had any air power in that case, So these kind of flaws are existing in the entire counteroffensive of the Ukrainians. It's sad, badly planned, uh, being poorly executed, and just throwing away troops in a very, very sad manner where they're losing a lot of lives. And
So that is insane. There are two things I want to ask you on this because the Kiev Post put out a report that said for every 100 meters, we are losing 4 to 5 men. And that was, I mean, a shocker for me personally. 4 to 5 men every 100 meters. That. Second thing is these kind of tactics. What does it tell you about what they've been taught by NATO?
you see, I'll just say the kind of training NATO could have provided, they provided to the since 2014 to the Ukrainian army, which existed, uh, which was there earlier. Now all that is either killed, maimed, or wounded. So that trained force has already been exhausted, and now whatever has been trained, whatever training has been given, it is in terms of weeks, not even months. And you know I mean, you impart 6 weeks training, 10 weeks training, and that's not good enough. You don't produce soldiers out of nothing, out of ordinary men. Soldiering is a very serious business, and trust me, all those who have faced bullets, and it gives you the jitters when you are actually the body trembles when you hear the first bullet going across your head. Just passing by, whizzing by. In the first 3 4 encounters, or 3 4, the fires that you come under, uh, these are quite rattling. It's over a period of time that a person gets confidence. The battle inoculation takes place. He gets inoculated from the sound. Once you are inoculated, you can actually make out the crack of the bullet, and you know exactly as to where it came from. So that requires a lot of experience, and not everybody has that. And in this particular case, definitely no, because they're just picking up men from the streets,
Yeah,
forcibly asking them to fight, and it's a non-cohesive force. They fight. Hats off to them. They're still fighting for them, the country, fighting for their territory, and I really acknowledge their bravery uh, at times. I mean, they're really, really doing a great job trying to defend their own country. But uh, you can't blame the soldier for it. You got to blame the planners for it, for getting men killed. Who's responsible? It's the leaders who are responsible. It's the people on top who are throwing away and wasting uh, lives. So they are the ones who are to blame, not the soldier. The soldier, uh, when once you've got a weapon in your hand, whatever little training you've done, you will fight. You will endeavor to kill a person in front of you and try and save yourself.
true.
The basic fundamental of firing is shoot to kill. When you shoot to kill, it does not mean that you have to get killed yourself. You have to protect yourself. So that's where the battle, you know, the basic field craft or the battle craft lies. And that field craft is where you shoot one round, you take one life, you shoot to kill while protecting yourself. So that's the art, and it doesn't come easy. It requires a lot of practice and
Absolutely,
a
absolutely.
lot of training.
What about the equipment, sir? We can see, I mean, like the kind of damage that the equipment has got.
Yeah, I
Bradleys
think
with 30 millimeter bullet holes. I mean, these videos are all around the place. These are those infantry fighting vehicles, the French infantry fighting vehicles, but huge bullet holes in the middle. So these are not like, I mean, aerial attack or drone attack. They were bullet holes that have pierced through the armor.
yeah, you have when a tank fires, or even a AFV, the armored fighting vehicle fires, they have rounds which are armor piercing. Okay, so you may not be firing it may not be a tank shell. It may just be an ordinary, 30 mm gun. But
Sure.
then the rounds that it uses are called APs, armor piercing shell rounds. So you have all these kind of ammunition which is available and which is fired against tanks. So it all depends on the protection that these, the AFVs, that is armored fighting vehicles, they provide. Now, as you have more sophisticated weapons, you've got more protection. More protection means more safety. So all that is there. But what the statement that you made, as far as the number of pieces which are lying all across, they're strewn all across the country
Yeah.
in a state as if, I don't know. I have seen this kind of a thing way back when I was a peacekeeper in Mozambique. You drive down, firstly, roads, and I'm talking immediately after the war in Mozambique, between the government forces and the Renamo forces. You had all these tanks and vehicles and all littered all over, and you dare not step out of your vehicle and into the field or so, because you never knew it was mine. So that kind
Hmm.
of a situation exists. And in this case, of course, the quantum of damaged vehicles, blown up vehicles. So, you know, I think this is going to be a great opportunity for all those who are into metal scrap business. When they just put, and it's a great opportunity for those who are going to be involved subsequently for demining.
Hmm.
So, if you are a Danish demining company, you are in for a good business, because God knows how many hundreds of dollars that you get per mine that you demine. So actually, people are preparing for this war to end, and so that they can make mint money.
Yeah, Larry
In
Fink from BlackRock was already having conference calls with Zelensky. So,
Yeah, so that's how it is. That's how it is. So people are looking at post-war reconstruction and post-war benefits. Now, another interesting thing which is happening and which is coming to light is the corruption which is there in Ukraine,
yeah.
and I mean, the amount of money that has gone in, the amount of money which has been looted, and the amount of money which has been siphoned off by officials is not funny. But this is only the Ukrainian part of it. I'm sure there are other benefactors also, the middlemen who are, ensuring that these equipment has been provided.
Yeah.
So now, what's going to happen in the future? Let's look at that. I'm going to take the Black Sea first. Will the Russians establish a proper blockade? Will the NATO, step in? Will the American forces, American ships also come into this area?
Hmm.
In my opinion, NATO should and will try to avoid putting their own ships into danger. Yes, all those countries which are, joining, which are the literal states, and they, if they have their ports and where they have the naval ships, of course you have them around. But if any other ship is going to come in and try and escort the Ukrainian ships, or those ships which are coming in to carry, take the grain out, if they're going to protect, I think then there's going to be a little bit of trouble. And because the Russians, in my opinion, are very, very steadfast and very, very convinced that they're not going to allow anybody to come in and go out of the
Yeah,
Caspian Sea.
that's
Yeah,
a spark point, sir. Hmm.
yeah, this is a flashpoint, and if uh, a folly takes place here, wherein you have a U.S. naval ship coming in into this territory, into the Black Sea, and then there's a confrontation between the Black Sea Fleet of the Russians and these ships which have come in from the other nations, there's going to be a little bit of trouble, and the escalation may take place beyond a certain limit. Now, we've already heard of, a little bit of tussle which is going on, where the Reaper drones have been interfered to by the Russian aircraft. So the Russians getting a little bold against an unmanned, you know, MQ-9 Reaper. So, so if these kind of things can happen in the air, and I'm sure such things will also happen in the seas.
Hmm.
Then, of course, we've had the Ukrainians trying to blow up a ship or two, the Russian vessels, and two such the unmanned drones. These have been kind of shot by the Russians. So the escalation factor, the Black Sea is going to keep, if it keeps increasing, then the intensity of war and the shape of war may change.
Wow, that's
So
dicey.
that, yeah. So we've had heavy pounding of the Snake Island today, and we've had the ammunition dumps being blown up in Crimea,
Yep.
and a large these kind of things are going to happen. So if the escalation takes place here, the war may take a different turn. That's one. Two, how deep and how effective the Ukrainian offensive, counter-offensive is, and how fast it can be executed and how deep it can be executed uh, towards Mariupol and towards trying to cut off the road leading to. I mean, that's their aim after all. So if that kind of a thing happens, or even the bridge gets blown up again, so the shape of the war is going to be different. If I were Ukraine, I would blow up the bridge.
Hmm.
I would put all my force together, and whatever I have, and I'll drive a wedge in the defenses in the direction of Mariupol, and try and gain maximum territory. So the moment you try and do this, then you will be again uh, turning. There would be a turning moment which will take place as far as the Russians is concerned. Now, how would the
True.
Russians react? Will they try and stall this offensive, counteroffensive, if it is so effective, or will they want to go in the north and go in deeper and make these people recoil? You see,
Yeah.
that's how the games are played. You go in deep like this.
You open
Will I
another
come
front.
back? Yeah. Will I come back, or do I have adequate forces to stop this? If I have adequate forces to stop this, well, I'll stop this. Meanwhile, I'll go in from the north and go in deeper. So these kind of major offenses, when they take place, the only thing is they have to be effective. They have to be carried out with speed. They have to be carried out deep and with the complete wherewithal
Hmm.
and with a particular aim. What is
True.
the aim? Either to capture territory, or to make the Russians recoil, or make the Ukrainians recoil, or just make territorial gains. And at the end of the war, we'll see as to what bargaining uh, tools or bargaining chips that you have. So uh, this is what we got to be watching. This is what we got to be waiting for. And will the Russia limit its aims to these four territories, or
Hmm.
will it escalate beyond this? Is something that we got to see.
So,
Next,
what? Please,
yeah,
please, sir.
next, yeah, the amount of there's a whole lot of equipment pouring in again. The US having committed about 400 million worth of ammunition, mostly ammunition. Now, F-16s don't seem to be coming. The training also doesn't seem to have started. So I don't know. Are we preparing for another 2 odd years? It kind of looks like. Yeah.
Oh my. Sir, the larger confrontation of Ukraine is sorry, the confrontation of Ukraine is a larger aspect of the confrontation between Russia and America, right? Uh, they're also kind of not in a face-off sort of a situation, but in a situation in Syria as well, and we see that place escalating now. F-35s have been brought in. The Russians have been creating a lot of havoc with the Americans there. They've been overflying their bases. They've been, messing around with their drones. They've been doing a lot of reconnaissance over their heads. Uh, do you think this is again the Americans trying to create a distraction down there so that the Russians just change focus? Or is that a separate game not connected to anything of the sort? How do you kind of see, sir?
You see, the Americans. Let's say it's an America. Let's say it's America versus Russia, right? NATO versus West versus Russia. Now, as far as if I'm a smart military or a organization like NATO, I would want Russia to kind of, you know, be busy here and be busy there and be busy elsewhere. So the attention gets divided, the resources get divided, and obviously, when such activities take place in Syria, etc., the attention is going to be divided, the resources are going to be divided, and the gains that you are making in one particular area, you will have to divert certain or keep certain. Even if you don't have to divert, you will have to keep certain
Some
forces,
reserves. Hmm.
some reserves. So this is part of a strategic master plan which will get executed, and that's how military minds work. So I would take it as a very deliberate action to ensure that Russia is kept busy in other parts of the world as well.
I take it I kind of take it step forward in your last comment before I get on to the viewers' questions. You saying that it's a diversionary. If I were Russia, I would keep some forces spare and not go in hardcore and break my head in Ukraine so that I can handle these kind of little flare ups around the place. So, is that one of the reasons why he's trying to restrict himself to the four oblasts?
Uh, yes, it could be one of the reasons, but I do not think uh, that this is the correct read on the whole thing as well. Russia is following a very smart wait and watch policy. Troops not committed, conscription age increased from 27 to 30.
Hmm.
Uh, so another 1.5,
Retirement age. Hmm.
yeah, another 1.5 million added. So all this happening, and if the US is hell bent on dragging this war for another 2 odd years, right, by continuously supplying, keeping the supply chain open, Russia is not going to commit all its troops. Definitely
Makes
not
sense.
committing.
Hmm.
So he's going to conserve. Russia would like to conserve its forces. See as to what your war aims are and how they're wanting to tire out Russia. Will not get tired.
Okay, because he's not doing
Russia will,
much.
yeah, it will not get tired because it will not commit that much. It will only get tired if it starts committing that much. So it is all,
Yeah.
it's more of a non-contact warfare which is taking place today. Contact is only taking place where the counteroffensives are coming, right? And there are only of these the Ukrainian counteroffensive, and the Russian offensive is in areas where there are weakly held areas.
Hmm.
So here he's just trying to stop an offensive. There he's wanting to go into deeper into weakly held areas, wherein their losses are much less. The,
Less.
the Russian losses are less. So
Hmm.
he's conserving his forces. You got it. So Russia is not getting tired out. Yes, it's getting. I mean, it's consuming a lot of these missiles that it's firing. It's consuming a lot of these Lancet drones. But then at the same time, he's ramped up his production, and his production his line is like working three times. So he's prepared. You want to go in for the long haul? Fine, I'll play it that way, and that's what precisely what the Russians are doing
Wow. That's a very
now.
deliberate move.
Yeah, I mean that's how it has to be. I mean they're not in a hurry. They're not stupid. You want to pump in as
That's
much as you want to pump in as much as equipment you want to pump in. Go ahead and pump in. But where are the men who's going to fight?
true.
I make the statement again. I did that last time as well. Where are the people who are going to fight? What is the quality of the manpower that is going to be fighting? So the quality of the soldier also matters, and how many will you? And the unfortunately, the Ukrainians, just to prove themselves that they are still, you know, capable of taking back their territory, they continue to push in and send troops to die. I think they also need to take a pause. The Ukrainians need to take a pause, need to regroup, need to reevaluate their strategic plans, and have a kind of a pause and then regroup. There's no harm in pressing the reset button,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
So maybe it's time for the Ukrainians to do a reset, and as far as the Russians are concerned, they will wait and watch.
Fantastic. So, let's get into some audience questions. Guys, let me see. Okay, there are about 520 people watching. Can we have a little more likes than 212? Yeah, please. Uh, Request all of you to please press the like button. Like you helped us last time, it went across the world. Help us this time as well, because this is the same message that needs to go. If I mean, I hope Zelensky in one of his train travels around the country, sitting and watching YouTube, and gets this as a notification. And because for me, sir, the main thing is, and I'd say this out loud, lives are being lost like crazy, and it just doesn't make sense anymore. I mean, you've lost it. Just
I mean, I you look at this country has been totally destroyed for no rhyme or reason. It's a very sad state. I mean, where is the United Nations? I do not see no United Nations, and I don't see anybody even making an effort now to bring in peace because friend
previously there
Zelensky,
was China, Saudi, everybody tried, everybody's now backed off.
yeah, they kind of because they're not relenting. Zelensky is not relenting.
Yeah,
So there was this time when there was, if you recollect many episodes earlier, we were talking about Zelensky would be asked to just kind of fade away or made to fade away. Uh, Maybe that will change the course of events. But as of now, I think unduly lives are being, just committed to the grave.
true. So, guys, I was saying, like the show, subscribe to the channel if you haven't. We do this every Thursday night. For those of you who are joining in for the first time today, please watch the previous shows so that you get a little bit of context about the predictions that Sir has been making. You can become a member of this group by just clicking the join button down below, or you can send us super stickers or super chats. You can also directly contribute to me with the QR code up there. Connect with me on Telegram and Twitter. Let's take the first one. Thank you, sir, for your super chat. General Saab, do you think that the Russians are yet again using deceptive strategy by spreading ideas of Wagner going to Poland, but actually they will go south towards Kiev, as predicted by you earlier as well?
Yes, Narayana, I still do believe, and I hold my previous assessment, hold on to my previous assessment that Wagner troops are not going to be looking at Poland. Why should they bring another country into the battle until and unless provoked? So, in the entire, it would make sense that when a major offensive is being launched towards Kiev, at whatever stage, maybe today, maybe after, maybe next year, it's the Wagners which will come in from the north, and that is how it will get supported, and that is how the attention of the Ukrainians will get divided. And whenever that takes place, will take place when the Ukrainian army is actually uh, ineffective, has lost out on majority of their equipment will keep pouring in, but majority of their manpower and their kind of will to fight is broken. That's the time this would happen. But definitely it will happen.
Tarun, thank you so much for your super chat. Given US stationing new troops in NATO countries and agreed for more arms, is this just a show off or contemplation of a full blown NATO versus Russia war? Biden recently mobilized 3,000 reservists.
Yeah. See, it is indeed a full blown NATO versus Russian war because the entire NATO wherewithal, the NATO countries are behind this entire effort of the West, of the United States. Now, I wouldn't say it's a show off. The fact is that the US and NATO are fighting against Russia on Ukrainian soil without committing their own troops. They will make sure that Ukraine fights and fights and to the last Ukrainian. And they will continue to provide the wherewithal till such time the last Ukrainian is alive. These guys have got no love lost for anybody else's lives. And this is a kind of a bitter lesson that they've learned post Afghanistan. Why commit troops when you can use somebody else to do your dirty job? You're making somebody else die for you. This is the fallout of a clear cut United States policy. Why should I kill my own men for a country which doesn't matter to me? So this is the smartest move. I mean, they've used the Ukrainians to serve a purpose which is absolutely selfish and which is a foothold, a complete hold on Europe by the United States.
Wow. About Ukraine's isolation at the recent EU summit, NATO, uh, would how should one now assess the probability of Ukraine military turning against Zelensky and pursuing a détente with Russia instead, or is it too much bad blood?
Yeah, good one, Chitness. The fact of the matter is, when did you last hear Zelensky making any profound, prediction, statement, talk? Uh, nothing coming about after this NATO summit in Vilnius. And you know that isolation has taken place on many fronts. I mean, finances is not the only thing. The major aspect is I think he's got a little too big for his boots,
Yeah,
and that he's pissed off a large number of diplomats from many countries.
he's gotten too big for his sport shoes, sir.
Yeah,
Sorry.
whatever. Yeah, but he's gotten a little too big for his shoes, and I'm very sure, barring a few loyal, loyal part of the Ukrainian army, I'll just ask a question. If I'm walking on the street and you pick me up and you tell me to fight, and I surrender, I mean, it's all what? Or I die, or I get maimed. I mean, what love lost do I have for anybody who may be Zelensky? So there is a lot of discontent as it is on ground within the Ukrainian armed forces against what is happening. So sooner or later, uh, well, you never know. And why do you think all these generals are getting silenced? And why do you think all these, people are being silenced or people are being removed or put into prison for on grounds of corruption? I mean, these are the guys who must be saying, "Thank you very much. We've had enough. Let's not fight." They're not towing the line of the president, so they're disappearing, or they're being made to disappear. So there is a very visible discontent as if you see it. Yeah.
I mean, Ashok says, "Sir, I believe Russia is not moving forward as there is some backdoor talks with the US, some assurance to keep the rest of Ukraine neutral."
I won't be surprised. I know that there is a lot of backdoor talks. These are called what? What are these called? What talks? Anyway, so when such talks take place, we did talk about it last time, or we
Yes,
left
sir.
it maybe. Uh, you see, these talks happen. There are three types of talks. One is one to one, government to government, right? That's not happening. So what do? You have civilian diplomats, ex diplomats, who try and meet ex diplomats who were friends earlier or who served together earlier. They try and bring about peace. So it's the typical name which keeps slipping out of my mind. Now, when these kind of talks take place between ex diplomats or ex military people who've served together, or what are they trying? They're meeting each other in a third country and trying to bring about peace, right?
Track two, sir? Or
Yeah, track two. That's Thank you for prompting me. So track one, track two. Track one is where one-to-one government talks. Track two is where pure non-government officials meet up and discuss peace or discuss an issue. What is happening here is something called track 1.5, wherein you have a mix of government and the civilian officials, ex-officials. So the ex-officials are the ones who are facilitating the meeting, and it is the government officials who are actually talking once they get together. So the facilitation is done by the ex guys, and the actual talks and the meet is spoken about by the government guys. So you have the track one, track two, and track 1.5. So this kind of a thing is taking place, and it does take place whenever there is any conflict or wherever there is any disagreement. So the point that you have made is, well, quite possible, and we did discuss last time that there are talks that Russia would be given 20% of the territory along with Crimea, and the balance of Russia, a balance of Ukraine, will become part of NATO. If what you just said, that it remains neutral, well, that's the most ideal condition to be in. But in my scheme of things, this neutral Ukraine would only occur if there is trifurcation. You understand what I'm trying to say?
chota sa?
Ha. Chota sa Ukraine, buffer zone. The rest of it, the small Ukraine which will be left after Lithuania and Poland have taken their share of pound of flesh, of their share of territory, and Russia has taken whatever the territory that it claims, and whatever is left will be told, okay, you will be neutral now. Because bringing that kind of a Ukraine into the NATO fold will have no value. And what would have
It will
value is the,
actually.
yeah, what would
Mm,
have value is the, what Poland would have acquired in the West.
yeah,
So that would have value as far as NATO is concerned. So NATO comes closer, has a little territory called Ukraine, which is neutral, and the rest of it is goes to Russia. So quite possible, and this perhaps could be an ideal arrangement, in my opinion, which will suit the West, it
suit
will
the
suit the
Russians.
Russians, and who cares about the Ukrainians in any case?
Funnily speaking, the word Ukraine actually means people who live in the borderlands.
Yeah,
So it will finally serve its purpose of the name. I mean, if the thing actually happens. Uh, Harshal, thank you so much for your contribution. And let me come back to where I was. Becomes a little, yeah, okay. Let's. So, hello, Major General. So, I'm wondering why it takes so much time for the Russian forces to take small towns like Mariinka, towns nearby Bakhmut. Why can't artillery strikes help them to take these towns quickly?
I agree with you. I also wonder as to why it takes too less. Why would it take so less a time in capturing these small, villages or towns nearby? Actually, what happens is urban warfare or to fight in built-up areas is quite a tedious job. It's not easy because you have to clear every house. Ideal conditions are when you I spoken earlier also, when you advance, bypass these small locations, you just keep small troops to keep them busy, and you move ahead. Now that kind of a tactic doesn't seem to be getting applied here, where the Russians are advancing on a broad front, ignoring these small locations, leaving a certain force behind to tackle them, and moving ahead. And then, of course, keep pounding them by RT. Uh, I think this is all to do with conservation of their forces. They just don't want to commit so many troops. They will keep blasting them at RT because the moment you capture an area, you go to deploy troops on ground. So you're committing troops on ground. So that it's something which you got to understand. Capturing is easy. Now thereafter defending it again, you need troops. So that is why they take their own sweet time, so that they ensure that everybody is out of that. And when it has to be held, it can be held by a smaller force. That's the only explanation I can give it to you. Otherwise, taking all this should not take much time.
So, a couple of more. So, what is the name? What is the game of USA in the Ukraine war? This is your favorite question, if I may. If the near threat was China, was there logic in this war regarding China or just their ego, pride? Does the US take China as a serious threat?
Different issue. China, serious threat. Very serious threat. Ukraine's got nothing to do with China. It's got it's got everything the Americans to do with Europe. Now, by having a foothold on Europe, by having a foothold on Europe and influence on the uh, the Arctic region countries and the areas around. You're looking at the Baltic Sea countries, you're looking at the Nordic countries. So that is where the entire flow is, or the attention is, because China is also taking a lot of interest in the Arctic. So how does the US match up with China in the Arctic region is an issue. For that, they need a total influence on this Finland, Sweden, all these Nordic countries. So that's what is happening. It's a long game. Uh, Ukraine is just an excuse, and it is to keep Russia on the toes. And China remains a serious threat. China has to be tackled. China has to be tackled in the Arctic. China has to be talked. The Northern Sea route has to be once opened, has to be monitored and made sure that the China doesn't freely use it. And then, of course, the Indo-Pacific is where the interest lies. So this China is a serious threat.
Thank you so much for your contribution and question. Is it possible that Russia will take Odessa, link Transnistria, Transnistria? Seems Transnistria, a part of Moldova, actually chose Russia, and they get Odessa and stops NATO military shipments. Please comment.
Possible Russia will take Odessa and link. Yeah, I mean, it's not only linking up with Transnistria, but it is to do everything with the Black Sea.
Hmm.
Odessa, I'm quite tempted to read this book. I read it a long time back when I was a kid, Odessa Files. So I'm just trying to get back, get hold of this book again and see as to what it was all about because this name it keeps bugging me. I would have read it when I was in school in 10th or 12th or something like that. So Odessa has significance and Odessa will
Huge.
be taken. And if I were if I were a Russian planner, I would endeavor to take it because I would want full control over the Black Sea. And in a way, other than physically getting onto Odessa, you've destroyed the port. The entrance to Odessa, as far as the Ukrainians are concerned, they have mined it,
Yeah.
right? So a lot of demining activities are to take place about 100 odd kilometers apparently as mined. So Odessa is important. That entire coastline is important. That must be taken. And the moment the Russians take it, trust you me, they will not find or have the need to go beyond the four blasts, this particular area in Crimea, and that's it. They'll be happy for the next 10 years or so.
Is the northern offensive a field, sir?
Yep. If that works, nothing like it.
Yeah, it looks like it because it's very light, the northern offensive. And in the south, the Ukrainians have nothing there.
They're getting tired, exhausted, not
Mm.
physically, mentally, but exhausted. Just military hardware is not going to get you anywhere. Just remember this.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, that's what the West is playing on, providing hardware and money, not getting anywhere. No, no. You have a few motivated troops who are not fighting for Ukraine. They're fighting for their own lives because they know if they don't fight, they'll get killed. And whosoever is cheering Ukraine, they're all doing it from the sidelines. Trust me.
True. True. Global Office 2.0 says, sir, ask if Russia wins this war, what happens to NATO? And then if China will have the courage to invade Taiwan.
Very big question and a good debate taking place in many circles as far
Yeah.
as this is concerned. I made this comment last time that NATO has become defunct, and I had a friend from NATO who was who scoffed at me. If you go into the comments, I found it very interesting. And the statement that he made was NATO is exceptionally strong. There's about
Ha
1 million people who are part of the NATO countries. And how can you say it's defunct? Now, if Russia wins this war, which in a way it has, it is
already
captured.
has. Mm.
Yeah, it's got about 18 to 20% or whatever percent. 23, 24% of territory which they've already gained. And I mean, imagine one country fighting 50 odd countries. If you're just taking NATO, there are about 32 countries, right? And that is 31 plus one. Whether Finland's joined or not, that's different. But the that is the kind of force application which has taken place. I wouldn't say force application, the effort wherewithal application.
Hmm.
After all, force is just Ukrainian troops dying. But that is the kind of uh, resilience Russia has. So in a way, Russia is actually, let's take it, it's is one, it is winning, and it has the capability to capture and win more. Let's be real about it. Now, what happens to NATO? Agreed, NATO is a conglomeration. It's an organization. It's an organization. It's not an army. It's a North Atlantic Treaty organization. It's an organization. It's like United Nations, an organization. You know, it's, that's about it. It's just that it has a NATO headquarters and it has uh, earlier it had four brigades. Now they made it to eight, and now maybe to 12. Earlier there were battalion size brigades, 12 battalion size task force based. Now there may be brigades. So they've strengthened it up, and they're fully dependent on the American forces.
Hmm.
Let's get it right. So that's what all NATO is about. What actually should have happened is, in my opinion, if the Europeans were smart, they would have said, "Thank you, NATO. We talk EU defense force." I mean, same force, more commitment.
पैसे नहीं देने ना sir. Don't want to pay.
That's what I'm saying. Same force, more commitment. I mean, they
Hmm.
committed to the defense of Europe. Now you're committed to the defense of Europe, but you're looking at US. You're looking over your shoulder to the United States. Come, big brother, help us out. So this kind of a thing has happened.
Yeah.
As far as China's courage to invade Taiwan, a different ball game. Not happening. No, you'll ask me why not happening. You can tempt China, but Taiwan is not Ukraine.
Yeah.
Let's get it right.
Very
Uh,
difficult.
no, the US the US is primarily a naval power. It's not a land force. It is an air power and a sea power. And
Sipa.
all of it is directed at China. It is all directed in the Indo-Pacific. So
It doesn't matter if they don't have ground troops.
let's not talk of a conflict happening there. China will never risk, and they are looking at peaceful integration, which they are ready to wait. Yeah.
Uh, Tejas says, Sir, Russia can clearly see NATO weapons being used. Why doesn't Russia take the offense to this and strike at NATO? Do you think a much stronger Russia would have done it?
No, it's not like that. When you go to war, when you go to war, you look across over your shoulders and look at your friends and say, "Help me out." That's what they're doing.
True.
The Russians are not taking any offense to this. Of course, they know that it is all, if the Americans are not supplying this kind of equipment, or if NATO was not fighting, the war would have ended long time back. The Russians know this. The Russians also know it that the NATO forces, the Americans, trying to tire them down. So now Russia does not want to get into a direct conflict with any of the NATO countries. Period. The
Nor do the
moment you,
NATO countries, sir,
yeah.
for,
So
for that matter.
the moment you have a conflict, or uh, one missile fired onto a NATO country and to territory will spark off maybe a World War III,
True.
and Russia doesn't want to risk it, and nobody wants to. They called it a special military operation with a specific aim in mind. That's all that they've done.
So
So
last two,
they
sir.
never, yeah,
Putin changed the nuclear policy from existential threat to territorial integrity threat. Crimea was bombed. Moscow Kremlin was bombed. No action was taken by the Kremlin. Please comment.
good one. But then it's nobody wants to go nuclear, and territorial integrity threat will come about to play if the Ukrainians come anywhere near Crimea, and Crimea is about to fall, and that is when you will talk of territorial integrity or of existential threat. So that's nowhere near. So bombing of Crimea does not mean that the territorial integrity is under threat.
Hmm.
So that's about it. It's similar to the
And
Ukrainians also bombing or the drone attack on Moscow and things like that.
these are, would you call them pinpricks, sir?
Absolute pinpricks. These are fingering an issue.
Hmm. And the last one, which is, I think, a very interesting question. What is the role of Turkey? Seems to be milking both sides.
But Saab comes up with a very smart question every time. And yes, Turkey is doing that, and precisely is playing smart. And trust you me, it's not gaining favors. Uh, it's not becoming any popular. But
Hmm.
then it's holding it. It's playing its cards well because uh, he has to play both sides. Part of NATO, so he has to kind of oblige NATO by committing to its commitments. That's one. Two, it needs equipment from Russia. It needs Russia needs Turkey to ensure that no blockade happens. So yes, I think he's the smartest of all at the moment and playing the cards very well. And what you said is milking both sides definitely and to its advantage. And that's how I think that's how diplomatic smartness is all about. He's playing it smart. I think that's what he's doing, and he's doing it well.
True, sir.
Yeah.
I must say to all the audience here, there are so many questions. Sorry, I can't take all of them, but let me assure you, some of them are really interesting. I've taken questions that are like, they're two, three, which are similar ones. So I've taken one to get that sentiment out. But sir, this is, I mean, today's been actually, we've not really gone into the Ukraine war as per se that much. We've actually looked at the larger aspect of the concept of the Ukraine war, if I may, the globalist agenda behind the Ukraine war. What is happening in terms of the thought process between both the countries? And I think that's an interesting way to look at it, because both the countries are today at a juncture of a decision, as you very rightly brought out. The juncture of the decision for Ukraine is to how long to fight, and for Russia, as a matter of fact, you said that how far do we go? So both have this nagging question that they need to ask, and it's uh, it's a very interesting scenario. And I think, as you said, the next 10-12 days should be very, very interesting to find out. Probably by the next live that we sit down at, I think some movement should happen, because, as you said, Ukraine is pretty much on the edge. We are seeing defections. We are seeing. I sent you that Twitter, if you remember. The whole line of, I think, about a battalion of tanks just surrendered to the Russians. White flags just gave up. So I wonder if something like that is going to happen, a complete capitulation of Ukraine. Let's wait and watch. Gentlemen, ladies who've joined us, thank you so much for this lovely audience. We had about good, very very good numbers of people. Spread the word about this video and this channel. I'll be grateful to sir once again. Thank you, sir, and we shall see you next Thursday for another insightful episode. Till then, sir, Jai Hind.
Thank you very much. As always, enjoyed interacting with all of you, and we shall definitely wait and watch and see as to where it goes, whether Putin returns, the grain deal gets back again or not, and how the grains are provided, which you didn't talk about. These are questions to ponder upon,
Yeah.
and let's see as to what happens in the coming few days. Thank you very much. It was enjoyable talking to all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Jai Hind.